Kurt, I'm gonna go to a local card show this
Hmm.
weekend, and I want to take advantage of some of your advice. What are
Sure.
some of the cards that I should look for where I'm gonna see like a really good return on investment? Like I'm gonna try to buy I don't know, a vintage card or what have you. What sort of advice do you have me to go look for? Like what types of cards, what grades?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. All right, so let's do two scenarios. Let's just do like
Okay.
we'll call one modern and we'll call one vintage, okay?
Okay, good.
So for vintage guys, I would still highly suggest looking looking for ones that are authenticated or slabbed because
Hmm.
nothing worse than like doing a bunch of work and sending it in and then it's like trimmed or something. If you can, it's never a bad move. Get a game plan before going to a show, possibly if you can, because I know we're all a little bit impulsive as buyers, which is awesome. Keep your impulsivity because it makes it fun. But if you can get a little bit of a game plan, so if you're like, hey, I'm going to go today and I want to look for 1952 tops, I want to look for 1948 Bowman, and I want to look for 1933 Gaudy. If you bring three of your own cards with you that you know are not altered, and you find some cool raw ones, ask if you don't mind if you can just do a comparison to make sure that they're the same size. Just put
Okay.
your so because it's the
Oh,
worst if
that's
you buy,
really good advice, Kurt. That is
right?
really, really good advice. I never thought to do that. Like,
Any
especially bring your own. they trim 86 all the time. Just
exactly.
having it on you would be great.
And if you're like, well, how do I know the one that I have? You know what? Buy a shitty 86
Right.
that's like this and just crack the damn thing open so you know it's the right size. Buy
Yep.
buy a cheap Bowman,
Yeah.
crack them open as long as you know it's the right size. Keep those in your case. So anytime you're at trade night or buy night, keep cards with you that you love that you know are the right size. So at
Great
least you
advice.
can compare these to
Hmm.
raw cards that you're buying.
Right.
Because that's the
Right.
biggest bitch, right? When guys will go out and be like, man, I spent 5 grand on this raw lot last night. I have a friend in California that spent $1 million on a humongous lot. Over 500 of the most amazing vintage cards you've ever seen in your life. The biggest of the big. 75% of them were altered.
No.
And now
Oof.
he's in
Oh.
litigation. And now he's going to court. And now he's going through all this stuff. And the thing is, he didn't know. He didn't know. And he didn't know. But predicated on how this whole big sale went down was these are all perfect. And these are non-altered.
Hmm. Hmm.
$1 million later and now court. So
Okay.
now just keep your favorite stuff with
Okay.
you. You can always do a side by side.
Yep.
So
Bring
and that,
examples.
so
Okay.
now when you can confirm that it's like, and even guys, some of the best reprints will do like a road, like guys will reprint these cards and then they specialize in making them look like they're 70 years old with like almost like if you buy a relic Gibson guitar. I can buy a brand new guitar, but that black one right there is a 54 relic.
Oh.
So it looks like it's been made in 1954. The same thing the guys do to these cards.
Hmm.
Like the Pete Rose rookies, the Mickey Mantle rookies, all this stuff. These fakes are so damn good that I want you to also, when you hold your 48, 33 Gaudi to the side, you're going to see it has a different build than the reprints. So
Hmm.
and don't ever be ashamed or afraid, you guys, to ask a dealer, can I just look at that card? And if they see a comparing it, if anybody gets an attitude with you, shame on them because any dealer should stand behind what they're selling is integrity. And if
Absolutely.
anybody gives you pushback or about wanting to like make sure that their card is, they're taking it personal. You can just
Hmm.
remind them real quick. This ain't personal, buddy. I'm trying to buy a card and it's not authenticated. I'm trying to authenticate it the best I can right now. So
Hmm.
just know that don't be intimidated to do this, okay, guys? So then it
Hmm.
passes that test.
Okay.
Now here's what I want you to look for.
Okay.
The cards with the most room for restoration are going to be the cards with the lower scores, just by the natural odds of things, right? Vintage collectors, if you pony up big money and you buy a Mickey Mantle 1952, tops PSA 7, chances of it going to a 10 would be probably 1 in 1 billion
Hmm.
because it's great. It's already the best it's ever going to probably get. There's no creases, there's no dents. It can't get to a 7 with that. Chances are it's a touch off center. Chances are there's little touches, if you look under a microscope, little touches of missing paint around the card. That card is stellar. It's probably not going to bump up. But if you're going to go, play the odds of like, hey, I want to do a fun restoration project, buy a card that's a 1.5 to a 3-ish. That means you're going to have a dirty card. That means you're going to probably have some wrinkles. And what you want to identify is what's permanent. So what's permanent is if you got the card heavy off center, probably gonna be a couple points off. So do the quick math in your head, right? And then if you got rounded, softed corner, like these corners are never gonna get better.
All right. So for
Yep.
those on audio, he's holding up a pretty old card with very
Round,
rounded corners.
round.
Yeah,
Yep.
all
So
the
yeah,
corners
for
are.
our
Yep.
listeners, round corners are not gonna ever get sharp again. So
Yep.
Right.
round. So the thing
They
is,
won't grow back.
No.
I'm not that smart. I don't know how to make that. I don't know how to make that yet, you know.
Mm.
But so anyways, look for if you see creases, you want to make sure that the crease doesn't crack the paint and you have like lightning bolts going through a card. Because even if you
Okay.
soaked a card and cleaned a card, you're still going to see little lightning bolts going through it. So if you just have if you're
Oh.
inspecting it and it just has a couple folds in it, but it's not breaking the paint, you're like,
Hmm.
oh, I could probably shape that
That's
up a little
good.
better.
Okay.
All
No
right. But
breaking of
lightning
paint.
bolts are
Okay.
bad. That's basically like a
When you see the
spider web
lightning
crease.
bolts, it just got folded too heavy duty. You know
And
what I
then
mean?
you're
Hmm.
done. Yeah. Okay.
All
Avoid,
right.
guys, avoid tape. Avoid the big tapes. When you see a big piece of tape going across the card, from the 50s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, when that
That's
tape
tough to
turns yellow,
restore.
yeah, when it
Yeah.
turns that yellow brown, it
Yeah.
almost just it almost like melts and releases into the card, and
Oh.
it's next to
I sent Kurt a card like this. So I have a 1969 Art Williams card. It's a $4,000 card, just autographed and slabbed. On the back of that card, somebody hair dried some tape to get off, and it's like this brown sugar stain. I sent it to Kurt. He's like, "Man, I'd do a test if it wasn't autographed, but it's signed." And I'll tell you the reason I explored this card, it might even be like a 9 if it didn't have that stain. But I
ugh,
sent it in with the stain,
Oh.
and guess what it is? It's a 2. They hammered it with the grade. I'm
yeah,
fine with the 2. It's autographed and that's great. But
yep,
man, oh man, if I could get that off that card
I
would be
know.
valuable.
And the thing, so I just because like the thing is, I want to give collectors a swinging chance at these restorations. So like
Hmm.
if you go out and get like the dirtiest of the dirty with tape marks and it's cracked or missing paint, fellas, it ain't gonna do
No
Not
much.
gonna
chance.
happen.
So it's
All right.
almost
Okay.
like it's not a
Hmm.
my restoration projects are not like a cure-all. You gotta be like because like earlier in our conversation, you're like, hey, what's the products? I talked about the products. The education is the next part. The education is more important. The education overrides everything. Knowing what to buy, knowing what to look for, knowing what's fixable, knowing what's not. So like the perfect candidate is a card that looks better than the grade. You guys will know that, right? As vintage collectors, you'll see like a 2 sometimes. You're like, oh damn, that looks really good. That's like nice white borders. Three of the corners are looking good. All right, we got one soft corner, but what's the deal? You flip it over, there could be like, some water staining all over the back. Cha-ching! Buy that card right now. Buy that card right now. You're gonna go
Okay.
home and turn that thing into a 2 to possibly a 5. You know what I mean? So like
Wow.
when now in the perfect world, could you find a PSA 7 of a vintage card with like some weird goop on the front that all you need to do is wipe it off? Sure, but I think most people probably would have figured that out by now.
Yeah.
Not always. Some people don't
Hmm.
even like to touch a card, but
Yeah.
just knowing what's permanent. You guys avoid missing paint when possible. Avoid super heavy off center. Avoid cracks in it. A lot of the
Hmm.
other stuff, cleaning wise, you can do a good job of cleaning them up. So that's how I go vintage shopping.
Okay. That's vintage. Thank you for that. It's great advice. All right. Let's go to modern.
Modern, I'm gonna say also from a restoration perspective, even if you spend 5 minutes with a card, I notice it's kind of like my analogy is like you notice how like even if you don't use like your nice holiday silverware, it seems to be like dirty a year later or kind of like tarnished.
Hmm.
If you guys notice this, Chrome cards from the 90s, early 2000s, they start to kind of get a little fuzzy as time goes by. You'll kind of get that dull layer on them. It could be from like a weird plastic sleeve. It could just
Hmm.
be from your atmosphere, like guys in Boston. You guys have hot summers, cold winters, uh, days where it's 75% humidity, days where it's cold as a freaking, the surface of the moon, right? So it's like there's a lot of stuff going on out there. So don't forget, guys, all your chrome cards, your prism cards, polish those cards up. This will pull that foil or that film and that oldness off of them right away. And you'll be like, that only took 2 minutes and it looks great. Some of the stuff I'll show you guys takes like 4 days, you know what I mean? But like working
Okay.
on modern cards, just the basic practice of cleaning up the front and back is pretty cool. But here's something I want you to look out for now.
Hmm.
Um, un oddly low scored cards that look really good. So like this PSA, for example, I've seen more sixes and sevens and stuff like that on modern cards, and that's a weird number for me to see it on a modern card. Um, I had a friend that's a Bowman collector get a Bowman Chrome Auto, like like the most desirable Bowman cards that guys want that are baseball collectors. It was a 5 run. I don't know modern baseball that well, but it's like the Bowman. It's like a red edition of 5.
Hmm.
A very valuable card. He sent it in. There's an indent on the back. I don't know if you guys watch me do any of this stuff with the modern cards where I'll soak a modern card or whatever. This was a card I did a couple weeks ago on my show. But these modern cards with dents on the back, just like I do with my old baseball cards, I've been doing modern card soakings and to relieve dents on the back. And I had a Zion Williamson card that I did on my live show with dents going all the way across the back. If you guys are modern collectors, you ever look at the back of these cards sometimes and they just have these weird dent
Sure.
imprint
Yes.
stuff on them,
Hmm.
but the front is like fine, and you're like, what is this? Well, turns out with like Prism, Bowman Chrome, Optic, you can soak these cards to get those dents to come out of the back and turn these things in. Um, just on my Instagram this past week from customer feedback, stuff I haven't even done. Guys were sending me Trevor Lawrence cards that were PSA 5s with dents on the back, and now they're PSA 10s a month later because they
Man,
soaked got the
That is
dents on the
it
back.
wild.
sounds so scary too. You're like, oh, you just soak it. You just soak the card.
It really
But
is.
that's why I start with who's this? Jaquari McLaughlin. I don't
Yeah.
even know the guy.
Yeah.
So
All
like,
right.
you know what? For the $2, I guess gained unmeasurable amounts of value from working on this card.
Yeah.
That's
So
wild.
It's just
like
it's
I
hard.
have a card in mind. I have a Jokic rookie prism. It's a nice card, and it came back a 7. I'm gonna
right.
practice and do what you're doing, what you're
And
saying.
it might not, and here's where I was going to say, it might not even need to be soaked. Here's the thing. I don't know why some of these cards are coming back sixes and sevens, and then they can just be cracked and resubmitted and get a higher score. So
Mm,
it's not even really a Kurt's card care thing, guys. It's just maybe a strategy thing because people send me so many pictures every day of my wife about cards. I notice a pattern here. There is a ton of modern cards that are graded that look amazing from the front and back in these slabs. But I think collectors get them back and they're like, this is only a 6. All right, I guess I'll just sell it on eBay. And then they're not inspecting it further. It's almost like they gave up on them because I have guys that go out and search card friends of mine that will go out and search. They have saved searches for like, they'll save Victor PSA 5s and 6s. So when a PSA 5 or 6 pops up on eBay, they buy the damn thing right away and repair it,
hmm. So
and
Nick
it's
and I have been talking a lot about autographs. What special things do you need to do with autographs? Like, can you
I know.
soak an autograph card?
I so here's what I learned on for soaking a modern card.
All
I
right. So he's
soaked this
holding up
card,
a sticker autograph card, right? Or
sticker
is that
auto,
yeah,
Prism
sticker auto.
sticker auto. So
Yep.
Sticker.
I soaked this card because I wanted to learn, would the autograph wipe away or would the sticker wipe away? No,
Yeah.
it's totally fine. So
Nothing happened. I would have thought the sticker would. The
and
sticker would have came off.
anybody listening, you're like, I got to see this. It's on my Instagram page, you guys. So if you're like, what the heck, I got to visualize this. It's because I didn't want I get messages every day, guys, from guys going, hey Kurt, I got this like
Yep. I'm
this
one of them.
Patrick Mahomes auto, can I soak it? And I'm like, I don't know. I never even tried. Let's try. I've always done this to vintage cards, So, but I got so many people sending me dents on the back of these cards. I'm like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. So I'm
Yeah.
like, let's make a bath of card spray. Let's put it in there. And in my mind, I'm like, so from the physics of it, these have a hard plastic front. Like
Hmm.
you can flick these things, and you ain't gonna hurt the front of a prism card, right? But the back is kind of soft with plastic on it. But I'm like, if I can get moisture to penetrate this thing and lift up that dent, the front's gonna stay the same, but the
Ugh.
back will return to original, and then I just gotta slowly dry it and get it back to that nice mirror finish. Well, I figured it out, and it works.
I have so many. Oh, so
Dr.
many. I have
Frankenstein.
so many regrets now. I
I
have so
know.
many regrets.
But it doesn't work for
Oh.
everything. Like, because I had a guy send me the other day. So I'm like, read the best practices, ask me questions, practice on base cards. Because I had somebody, it wasn't a big mistake, but a guy sent me a picture. He goes, Kurt, I think I'm doing it wrong. he sent me like you know how Don Russ will make Don Russ optic and then they'll make
Hmm.
the like the paper Don Russ. He soaked a paper Don Russ card from the modern era. It doesn't come back right. It just looks like crap. It's ruined. You know, you can't soak Pokemon cards, unfortunately.
Oh,
Oh,
Paper
wait,
cards,
hold on one so why can't you soak Pokemon cards? What's the
they're
reason?
like I think that there's like the least amount of material on a Pokemon card is paper. It's like plastic and foil.
oh.
So
Huh.
plastic and foil when it gets wet, it just
Doesn't,
doesn't
yeah.
play
It's
nice
like
with
a,
moisture.
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah, I
Wow.
tried because I have so many collectors that, but like I just came to the point where I'm like, I'm proud that my card polish makes Pokemon cards look freaking awesome. But if they're creased or wrinkled, sorry,
Sorry.
Pokemon dudes, I do my
Wow.
best for you, but just polish them, you know?
So Kurt, I just taking a step back here. How do you feel? Let's just say you're like old school collector, right? You open these
Mhm.
cards yourself as a kid, you're whatever, 60, 70 years old. They look at this and they say, ah, man, I'm a purist. This is all not tampering is the wrong word. Like you're altering stuff. Like this
Yeah,
isn't the
yeah.
original card. What do you say to
Mhm.
somebody like that?
Well, I don't have a different message for that person, Nick. The message is, and I'm not hard to get a message from, if you guys know that, like I record everything and I say everything. So like my opinion is out there. So
Uh-huh.
I think that's like something that like just comes with your confidence and your belief in your product or your business is I don't have different hats for different scenarios. Like this is it. This is what I do. And you know what though? Um, I, any person that's popular or company that's popular will have trolls, and I don't really care because I kind of love them. They kind of like, that's the fuel I need because I'm crazy, you know what I mean? Like that. So like, I love that type of stuff. But really, guys, I get tons of like, sometimes it's awkward. I get so many nice messages or compliments or like people send me like a picture of their cards or I had people make like little knickknacks for me and people know that I like art and they'll like draw me little pictures. I have a whole wall of stuff that people send me. I don't really get too lost in any sort of trolly stuff or negative stuff, but I have had this is what I love about the company we built. I'll do Zoom calls or stuff or connections with people. Now you never know who they are when you see their Instagram logo. You don't know who's on the other side, right? I'll do like a Zoom call like this because I'll get some guys that are going, hey, can I ask you a few questions? And whatever. I'll pop on the Zoom call and it will be a 14-year-old boy. And I'm
Wow.
like, how cool. I'm like, a 14-year-old
Yeah.
dude wants to talk
Whoa.
to me? And we're
That's
talking.
cool.
And
Yeah.
then I'll do a Zoom call. And you know who hits me up more and more because they know I love vintage is old dudes. Old guys
All
love
right.
it. Old
Hmm.
guys love this stuff, Nick. Do you know that
Okay.
like I have friends that I've met throughout the country that are guys that are retired. They are in their 70s and even 80s. And they're like, we've had our cards for years. A lot of these guys aren't into grading. They
Right.
just like collecting because they're
Hmm.
kind of is that purest thing to them. Is they're like, no, Kurt, these are just for me. I don't really need to grade. I don't sell them. I don't buy them, but I sure do love. I've always been into, collecting, and like I have a couple that sends me. So if they're watching, I'm gonna send a shout out to Patrick and to Susie. Pat and his bride Susie are, and don't get mad at me, Pat, if I say it wrong. I think Pat is 78, Susie 76. Pat buys all the cards. Susie sits and works on them all with Pat, and that's what they do on dates on the weekends. And they'll send me like pictures from their dates, and
Oh, that's
I've
cool.
had more guys like our age, like that connect with their dads and they're teaching their dads how to work on cards and they're getting involved. So like um if somebody said really, hey, I'm not into this or whatever, I'd say that's cool, man. I mean, why are you telling me? You know what I mean? I
Hmm.
guess I'm a guy that's like teaches people how to do it, but teach their own. You know what I mean? As long as somebody doesn't come trying to like start a problem with me, I don't have a
Right.
problem with them. But it's a
Yeah.
choice, just like everything else,
I
right?
mean, people have restored the Sistine Chapel. I mean, that's a fact,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So,
I never got to it became more right when I was new and I had no customers, no
Hmm.
advocates, no homies out there that knew me besides my handful of friends from Detroit. Um, people would just shoot from the hip and say negative shit. But like the thing was, I I grew up, man. I gigged every weekend in my life. You know what I mean? Like I've
Hmm.
heard it. I've
Yeah.
I've dealt with the public enough where it's like I can't let the squeaky wheel get the grease. I only have this
Mhm.
much energy to give every day. And not only do I own a business and run a business and answer 1,000 questions a day, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I got stuff to do. So it's like, I don't really ever go toe to toe with any negativity. I just say, hey, if it ain't your thing, move on, and,
Mhm.
but it was one of those things that blows me away. I'm like, a guy like me that shows up with tons of free advice, all my products are under $100. Like this thing can clean 200 cards. I figure, why would anybody have a problem with something like that's so easy to use and so like this is like a cent, like 5 cents a card. You know what I mean? But of course there's skeptics or I mean, most people that complain or
There
have
always will be.
have never used any of my stuff. They don't
Mhm.
like the idea of it. So fortunately, guys, that's why I'm really happy to talk about it because I couldn't even share all the stories of cool stuff that people have shared with me. Guys, people that have been fighting addictions, people that have PTSD, people that were, veterans that are having a hard time, with whatever, that have sent me
Mhm.
stories or paragraphs about how card care has made their thoughts change. Like all of that has pulled me in so much harder to like push harder and just go, go, go than any, cheese ball that has a quick negative comment. Like that,
Well,
that's
that's
just
beautiful.
that's just life.
That's beautiful. You mentioned the 14-year-old story, and it made me think of something. We did an episode a while back with Dr. Collectible, me, Nick, and him, and it was like an innovation episode. And we were just like rocket pitching, throwing out ideas, things that are missing in the hobby. One of the ideas that we came up that day, and most of them were focused around like helping teenagers. Like, what
Sure.
could a teenager do on the weekends? So, the 14-year-old story that you mentioned, we had this idea of could a 14-year-old go to a card show, rent a table for $50 and grab supplies like you sell and like clean cards, like crack the cards, clean the cards. So it has me thinking, have you thought about doing that? Like you could almost like teach people and like franchise your service to
Yeah.
go out
Kurt's
to card shows.
Kurt's card cracking.
Yeah.
There
Right?
we go.
So honestly, yeah, because you know what? I always like as the company has grown, I always want to be the guy behind the guy. I want to
Mm.
be like whatever the name of your collectible shop probably serves Kurt's Card Care. Just like most places are probably serve Starbucks or something like that. You know what I mean? So the thing is, I want to empower other entrepreneurs and business people to go out and do this. Now, I'll keep the names private because it's they're it's just kind of just not really the point of the story. But you guys, I could tell you just personally 5 stories right now of guys that went into card care full time, clean cards full time, submit cards full time, and they have quit their other jobs and do this for a living. And they make well over 6 figures a year now, prepping cards and submitting cards for collectors.
Holy crap.
Stop it.
Like
And
that's
I've coached them.
amazing.
I told them what to charge. I told them how to do it. I help these entrepreneurs with how to set upfront contracts with customers so you're not taking on stuff that's not the right stuff, how to deal with bossy people, how to set expectations right. Like I will pour my heart into an entrepreneur and help them get set up and get rolling,
Well,
Wow.
if there's a teenager
Wow.
listening to this, you heard him. Kurt might be able to help you get started at
Or
your local
or
show or
last week,
something.
one of my buddies
My own
Joe,
son who
Yeah,
might
yeah,
be listening right
yeah.
now.
My nephew.
My 15-year-old or my 13-year-old, either of you.
Uh,
I had a buddy of mine that lives out of Missouri, and just it doesn't matter to tell you his first name. His name's Dan. Dan,
Mm.
entrepreneur, owned plumbing business his whole life, mid 40s. Said I freaking hate doing this. He's like, I got several crews, I make good money, but I don't want a job where it's just for money. He's like, I'm sick
Mm.
of just a job for money. And so he's been cleaning cards for the past couple of years and he uses my stuff. And he is transitioning of selling his firm and he has not, and it's not something you have to quit your normal gig and start cleaning. Like you start cleaning cards, it's a transition. It's not like you have to quit job A and get job B. You get good with working on cards and submitting cards. Trust me, the word spreads. Look at, I'm sitting here right now talking to you guys because of this stuff. You know what I mean? So like
so
you get
sick.
good at something. Yeah, people can come buy off Kurt's Card Care, but just as many people that buy off me, there's tons of people that would just love the convenience to have somebody else do it for you.
All right.
Yeah,
It's a
of
Wow.
legit
course.
job, guys, and you can
Damn.
That is
make
wild.
a nice living being a restoration expert.
Wow. Just to think how this all started to it's just just Great job all around.
Bravo.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
thanks.
All right. So Kurt, we have kept you way past.
Oh, it's fine. I like you guys. I like talking to
I've
you.
got two more questions. One we close with everybody. I'll ask that after this. So LZ and I, we're big music buffs. Given that you have so many beautiful guitars behind you, you seem to be a music guy. So
Yes.
we were having this debate yesterday. This is kind of funny. So LZ comes to me, he goes, Nick, at the peak of their powers, at the height of their popularity, who do you think was more popular? And he goes, the Beatles, Elvis, Michael Jackson, or Taylor Swift. I had my own response to it, but I don't want to steal the thunder. So what do you
That's
think?
a good question. So
Mm.
at the
The
peak of
At the
their
peak of their
peaks.
powers,
at
like
the
Yep.
peak of their influence.
yeah, like
Hmm.
Beatles, Ed Sullivan show, right? Like, Elvis changing the game, and like Michael Jackson, mid 80s prime, just all
Yeah.
over the place,
I
you know?
I think I got and I respect all of those people tremendously. Like
Yeah.
huge
Yeah.
fan of everybody you just mentioned because they're badasses and they believed in themselves and they put in to be the 1%, you got to outwork 99%. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And that's just and that's what you just that's those four artists right there.
Hmm.
So, but the one because the timing, it wasn't all in their control. The answer is the Beatles because
Oh,
the
oh,
because we
oh.
consume media a lot different now. We have lots of channels. You can choose to watch Taylor Swift anytime you want. Like my daughter, like I was telling her growing up in the 80s and I grew up in the country, I couldn't see what Michael Jackson looked like unless I went to a place where there was a poster of Michael Jackson or there was
Right.
it was easier, it was
Hmm.
harder to find content. So
Sure.
like
Wow.
so when the
Yeah.
Beatles were around, there was only a couple TV channels. There was no internet. There was no nothing. And that sound that these four savants or geniuses or all of like, and the badass part about the Beatles is they were roughnecks. They grew up in a tough neighborhood.
Hmm.
Sitting around with your homies and singing songs was not cool. You know what I mean? But they took it and they did it and they got out of the hood over there and their music flooded the world. And I think it was like Mozart and Beethoven were like original rock stars. These guys were insane. They could sit and write music and scores for 30 players to sit and play at once when they were 10, 11 years old. Like, how could you see the Matrix that hardcore? Like, how? How can you do it, And then, so they hit the ping pong ball one way, and the Beatles hit it back, and then everything else fell into place. The Beatles were like the first group that arranged themselves in a stage like a diamond, putting the drummer in the back, the lead singer in the front, flanking it with the strings. Like they built so many things that we just accept today. So were they better than all the other ones? That's subjective. But
Hmm.
since there was nothing to compete with them and there was like no Instagram, nothing. It was just like the analog world, and they went to the moon in the analog world. I think that they are number one. I think Elvis would be a close number two. Um, but I think the Beatles because they just went worldwide and they had the ability to like cater to so many audiences. They could
Mm.
rock, they could play country, they could play love songs. Like on a Beatles album, you'll hear ballads, heavy rock,
Yeah.
experimental, crazy, awesome stuff that
Like
like
Blackbird is just, yeah, like, yeah.
everything. You know what I
Sure.
mean? So I think that
All
that
right.
that that it all lined up, man, and that was just a special time in history and art. So
So the
I'm
way you're
almost
describing the Beatles is we had Walt Frazier on a bit ago, and he described his career, and he was comparing himself to Michael Jordan and LeBron James. And Walt Frazier said that he was like the Egyptians. He himself like needed to figure out, how do you get a sneaker deal? How do you go out at night with your fur coat and like make a scene and like people are taking your picture? How do you make yourself bigger than life? And MJ and LeBron actually copied him. And the way you described it, it kind of sound familiar with like the Beatles like did this all before anybody else
yeah.
did, and they had to figure it all out on their
Right.
own.
Yeah.
So that's
They didn't
that's
have they didn't
interesting.
have they didn't have handlers really. They didn't
Yeah.
have like they didn't
Hmm.
have the thing was their focus was on their message and music and all the other stuff came in later. But the thing is they not that MJ or the other people you mentioned focused on fame right away, but Elvis was very open with he wanted to be famous and he wanted to be noticed
Mhm.
and he wanted to be rich. And that's all fine things.
Mhm.
I am attracted to the Beatles where like we want to change the world with our words and our thoughts. And if money and fame fall in my lap, cool. And it was weird because when all the money and fame fell in their laps, it twisted them. It made them weird. They didn't like it.
Yeah.
It was
Right.
weird.
Mhm.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was like almost like a new ingredient in the mix. But and and I think John Lennon's words are right up there with the smartest people of all time.
Wow.
Like
Cool. I dig your answer. I almost said the same thing. It's not really a fair fight in terms of the exposure opportunities that each of those artists had. So it was an interesting comparison, but I like that. All right. So Kurt, final question.
sure.
We call it the coffee question. We usually ask people because we're dealing with sports cards, what sports figure would you want to sit down with and have a coffee for a couple hours, dead or alive? For you, I'm going to expand it to musicians. So you can only pick one person or one band. Who would you want to sit down and have a coffee with for a couple hours?
I'm
Oh,
gonna go.
probably a beer.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
You can
or a
have
go.
a
beer.
beer.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna go sports. All right.
Sports, all
Okay,
right.
gonna go to sports. All right.
Because sometimes I like the mystery around musicians where I don't want to know too much. I just want to know the music, because you peel the music back and we're all broken, crazy, weird people, and sometimes I like when like Ozzy's one of my favorite rockers of all time, but then now everybody knows Ozzy is a goofy, silly guy when I think we got to know him too much. You know what I mean? I liked Ozzy from Black Sabbath,
Yeah.
All
Not
right.
not from Meet the Osbournes. You don't like
Yeah,
them
so
from
like I kind of like my rock stars to be a little mysterious,
Yeah,
Yeah.
biting heads off
Mhm.
of bats and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
so
I
but
gotcha.
somebody that I will meet and somebody that I will connect with and somebody that I do want to get to know more is somebody that I've idolized my whole life, and that's Tom Brady.
Oh,
Ah.
okay. All
I
right.
um I really admire Tom Brady a lot. And just how he handles himself and how a person that has a billion fans and a million
Mhm.
critics has always just been able to fly high and soar high. And I love that he doesn't he he just knows how to handle himself. And I
Mhm.
appreciate that. So many different things. But I would just like to talk to Tom about his thoughts and perspective just on different things, family, life, um, discipline. I love discipline and I love systems and just systems that produce greatness. And I feel like Tom is very awesome at developing systems that produce greatness. And I just admire him for that.
Excellent. That's a good one.
That's that's
Yeah,
great. We
I
haven't
mean,
heard Tom Brady yet.
you're talking to two Pats. I got a signed Brady helmet above me.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, I'm with
Kurt,
you on that one.
Kurt, I grew up in Foxborough, and
Oh,
I
man.
worked for the Patriots growing up at the same
Oh,
time like Tom Brady was there. So I this
unbelievable.
is near and dear to my heart with that answer.
Unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
in college, I went to high school with Drew Henson, who was the
Oh.
quarterback that went
Mhm.
down for Brady to take over, and then and then watching Brady just, he was just I like all Michigan quarterbacks. I like JJ
Mhm.
McCarthy this year. I appreciate them all. But and Brady had a stellar record at Michigan, but I loved him as much as all the other Michigan quarterbacks. He was good and he did a good
Mhm.
job. But when he beat Alabama in the Citrus Bowl or whatever and came back and won, I was like, me and my buddies were like, this guy is gonna be like the next best thing. And then he didn't even like drafted. We're like, Tom Brady's good. Why don't they like him? And then he turned into Tom freaking Brady. You know what I mean?
The
And
goat.
and
Yes.
watching that, I
Mhm.
love that story,
Yeah.
dude. It's like it's kind of like Beatlesque. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like he went there because he
Mhm.
loved football and he loved teammates and he loved working hard and he wasn't the golden boy. And then I guess many could label him that, but I mean, but that's fine because he worked for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
It's all good.
Right.
He's just a badass,
That's
just a
great.
guy I would just like to hang with. So, Tom,
Thank
it
you
was
for
Tom
that
Brady.
answer.
video,
Tom
man. Look at
Brady. I
this. Got
dig
a
it.
fan, got a fan over here. I'll show Tom.
Yeah.
Tom, I'll show you all my football cards that I got of you too.
All right, we have to get this out to Tom somehow. We're gonna find a way. Kurt, thank you so much. This was a fantastic episode. I feel like I learned so much. My perspective on so many things has changed in the past hour. I
Oh
want to
gosh,
thank you for
how
that.
cool!
I honestly do. I
Yeah, this has
honestly do.
been really crazy. Like cards 101 almost.
Yes.
They're fun to
Yes.
talk about, man. I mean, there's a reason why all of us like this stuff. They're cool as hell. I've always loved them.
Yes. Well, listeners, you can tell that Kurt is a big personality. Uh, how can people follow you? Buy your product if you just want to share with the audience and ourselves as well.
Yeah, it's pretty. I tried to make my company name pretty easy to remember, so it's just Kurt's Card Care. All right, so you search it, you're gonna find something, and it will take you to my. Probably here's that's a good question though. So if anybody needs any to make any place any orders or needs any products, my website kurtzcardcare.com. But like I said, I'm happy if you buy a card care kit, but I want you to use it. So
Mhm.
I want you to follow the best practices. I got best practices on there because the first thing people will say to me is, "What do I do?" And I'll say, well, what do you collect and what are the issues? So to help like, a collector narrow that down, I have best practices based on the types of cards you collect. Then that will kick you right over to my YouTube channel. And anybody listening to this, if you're like, hey, I like your Instagram, Kurt, because it's kind of like a stream of consciousness and you're like just showing stuff random daily, follow me there. It's my social platform and I'm happy to talk with you on there if you got a message or anything like that. But if you're like, hey, I got to get to work and I need some advice, you go to my YouTube page and you click on playlists. So I have a vintage playlist, I have a Pokemon
Ooh.
playlist, I have an Edges and Corners playlist, I have a slab cracking playlist, I have surface cleanings, crease removal playlist, like so everything that my customers or card restoration people are going to need is on playlists on YouTube. And pretty much, man, I just pour it all out every day, guys. That's like
Mhm.
everything I know how to do. I lay it out there.
And you go live on
Perfect.
Thursday nights on
Wednesday
your
nights.
Wednesday nights, sorry, Wednesday
Yes,
Wednesday
nights on
nights,
your
I
everybody.
Instagram.
love doing that. If you guys
This
ever want to
is
watch.
for the audience who hasn't seen this, follow him on Instagram and just watch one. It's wizardry. Like in real life, it's just amazing.
Right. You're gonna see cards being soaked in
Yes.
liquids and what is going on?
Well, do you know though, you guys, and I'll tell you guys, and it's like I know we'll wrap it up, but like my
Mm,
biggest concern, my biggest concern is people messing up.
mm.
And so I kind of like built my whole message around not messing up. I I understand that sometimes like it's hard sometimes if you're good at something to teach people like Willie Mays, right? Like the greatest batter like ever. But then when he became a batting coach, he would tell people like, I don't know, just hit the damn ball. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
he was so good at it, he couldn't explain it.
Yeah.
So like the point is, I think I can explain it. So I just want guys to understand that like watch all I make these videos every week and all this stuff and I do these lives
Mhm.
because I want you to see that here's how you use the stuff I make.
Mhm.
And I want to set expectations because if somebody sent me a picture of a card with a bunch of scratches all over it, what would a typical salesperson say? Oh yeah, man, buy this card polish and wipe it all over. It'll go away. I'll say, guess what? Don't buy anything at this point because that ain't going to do a darn thing. You know what I mean? But if you have other cards, let me show you. Let me send you a playlist. If you got issues like this, get something from me. If not, don't waste your time.
Cool.
Mhm.
I just always want to
That's
be
great.
like, I want to have good rapport with my fellow collectors. So like, if you have a question, hit me up. I'll always shoot you straight.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Kurt.
Well, Kurt, thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me, you guys. You
You
guys are
got
great
it.
to talk
Yes.
to, man. If
Thank you.
anybody makes it to the end of this interview, thank you too. I know that we aired it out. So
They will.
let's hopefully we
They
entertained
will.
you.
All
I
right.
was on
Thanks
the edge of
again.
my seat. So thanks,
All right.
guys.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.